The Vulcarian warship Crimson Fang hung in the darkness between stars, its hull painted black to blend with the void. Inside the command center, Admiral Dexner watched his crew prepare the trap with practiced ease. They had done this 43 times before. 43 species had fallen for their trick. 43 times, they had grown richer and stronger. "Is the distress beacon ready?" Dexner asked, his 3 eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Yes, Admiral," replied the communications officer. "We have recorded crying sounds. We added the voices of children begging for water. We made the life support systems sound like they are failing. It is perfect." Dexner leaned back in his chair, satisfied. The Vulcarian Empire had turned deception into an art form. Other species fought wars to gain resources. They spent lives and ships in direct combat. But the Vulcarians were smarter. They let their prey come to them, driven by the one weakness that seemed universal among spacefaring species. Compassion. The strategy was elegant in its cruelty. They would find a new species, one that had just started exploring the stars. They would study their culture and find what made them care. Then they would broadcast a distress signal designed to pull at every emotional thread. When the rescue ships arrived, they would find not refugees, but a fleet of warships waiting to destroy them. "Tell me about these humans," Dexner said, pulling up the intelligence reports on his display. The tactical officer brought up images of Earth, a blue and green planet, mostly covered in water. "They are a young species, Admiral. They only achieved faster than light travel 8 years ago. They have established 3 colony worlds and maintain a small defense fleet." "Small and inexperienced," Dexner said with approval. "Perfect prey. There is something unusual about them," the officer continued. "They have a very strong response to distress calls. Their history shows they have laws requiring ships to help others in danger. They call it maritime law, something they carried from their ocean vessels into space." Dexner's eyes brightened. This was even better than he had hoped. A species with an actual obligation to respond to distress calls would send help without question or hesitation. "What about their military capability?" he asked. "Limited. Their ships are functional but not advanced. They use primitive kinetic weapons alongside basic energy shields. Our fleet will outnumber them at least 4 to 1. Standard doctrine says they will surrender immediately when they see our forces." The Admiral stood and walked to the viewing port. Outside, hidden by cloaking fields, 62 Vulcarian warships waited in formation. They had positioned themselves around an empty point in space near Proxima Centauri. The humans had a listening post there. They would detect the distress signal quickly. "Send the message," Dexner ordered. The communications officer activated the beacon. The false distress signal burst across subspace frequencies, a desperate plea for help. The recording spoke of a colony ship fleeing persecution. It claimed to carry 5,000 refugees, including hundreds of children. The life support was failing. The engines were dead. They had only days of oxygen left. "Please, anyone who could hear this, please help them." In the background, the Vulcarians had added the sounds of crying, of people calling out in fear, of children asking for their parents. Every detail was calculated to make rescue seem urgent and necessary. "How long until the humans detect it?" Dexner asked. "Based on their monitoring station locations, they should pick up the signal within 3 hours. Response time will depend on how seriously they take it." Dexner smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "They will take it seriously. That is what makes them perfect victims." He returned to his chair and pulled up the files on their previous hunts. The Malari had sent 2 science vessels to investigate. The Vulcarians had captured both ships, taken all their research data, and sold the crews as slaves. The Torsion had responded with a hospital ship full of doctors and medical supplies. That had been particularly profitable. The medical technology alone had funded 3 Years of military expansion. Each species had believed they were doing the right thing. Each had rushed to help strangers in need. And each had learned too late that predators existed who would weaponize kindness itself. "Admiral, we are receiving a response," the communications officer announced suddenly. Dexner sat up. "Already?" That was faster than expected. "What does it say?" "They acknowledge our distress signal. They say help is coming. They ask us to remain calm and conserve oxygen. They will arrive in 72 hours. 72 hours, Dexner repeated. Perfect. That gives us time to make final preparations. How many ships are they sending? The officer checked the sensors. We are detecting a large number of faster-than-light signatures. They are moving this way from Earth's solar system. How many? Dexner demanded. I count. 17 ships, Admiral. That is much more than we expected. Dexner frowned. 17 ships for a rescue mission seemed excessive. But perhaps humans were simply more generous than other species. Or perhaps they had a large fleet and could afford to send many ships. What classes of vessels? He asked. The signatures are difficult to read at this distance. They appear to be using unusual drive technology. But based on size estimates, we see cargo vessels, support ships, and what might be military escorts. Standard rescue fleet composition. The Admiral relaxed. 17 ships still meant nothing against his 62 warships. If anything, it meant more prizes to capture and more technology to steal. Over the next 3 days, the Valkyrians maintained contact with the approaching human fleet. They continued their performance, their actors groaning and crying in the background. The humans responded with constant reassurance. They provided medical advice for keeping people alive in low oxygen. They sent detailed plans for the rescue operation. They even asked about dietary requirements and medical conditions to prepare appropriate supplies. Each message made Dexner more confident in his trap. These humans were not just compassionate. They were thorough, organized, and completely unsuspecting. They had no idea they were flying straight into an ambush. On the final day, as the human ships approached the designated coordinates, Dexner addressed his fleet. All vessels, prepare for decloak on my command. Target their engines first. We want the ships intact if possible. Once they are disabled, we board and seize control. Remember, frightened prey is compliant prey. Make the first strike overwhelming. His officers confirmed their readiness. 62 warships, fully armed and powered, waited in perfect formation. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, exactly where the distress beacon indicated. 17 ships arranged themselves in a standard search pattern, their sensors sweeping the area for the refugee vessel. Dexner waited until they were fully committed. Surrounded by his hidden fleet, then he gave the order. All ships, decloak. Show these humans what it means to be prey. Commander Sarah Chung stood in the Deep Space Monitoring Center in Geneva, staring at the signal that had just appeared on the main display. Around her, technicians worked frantically to analyze every aspect of the transmission. The message was clear and heartbreaking. Thousands of refugees, dying in space, begging for help. Run it again, she ordered. The audio played once more. The desperate voice pleading for aid, the sounds of suffering in the background, the technical details of their failing systems. Chung closed her eyes and listened carefully. Something about it felt practiced, almost too perfect. But that might just be her cynicism speaking. Real distress calls could sound rehearsed when people were reading from emergency protocols. What do we know about the source? She asked. Lieutenant Park pulled up the analysis. The signal originates from the Proxima system, approximately 4 light-years from Earth. The linguistic patterns match no known species in our database. They claim to be fleeing persecution, but do not name their persecutors or their homeworld. Life signs? Unable to confirm. The signal is audio only, transmitted via subspace beacon. If there is a ship there, it is either powered down or using stealth technology. Chun walked to the display and studied the coordinates. Proxima Centauri was close, within easy reach of their fleet. But it was also isolated, far from normal shipping lanes. An ideal location for an ambush dot. She had been in fleet command for 12 years. Before that, she had served on rescue vessels for 8 years. She knew the calculations that went through every captain's mind when they heard a distress call. The need to help warred with the need to stay safe. Most of the time, the need to help won. But Sarah Chun had learned to be careful the hard way. 17 years ago, her younger sister had been on the colony ship Distant Hope when it suffered a catastrophic failure. The ship had sent a distress signal, and for 3 days, no one had come. By the time a passing freighter found them, 70% of the passengers were dead, including her sister Da Chun had promised herself that day that no one would ever die waiting for rescue. Not while she could do something about it. Send the acknowledgement, she ordered. Tell them help is coming. Tell them to conserve oxygen and remain calm. And get me Admiral Okonkwo immediately. While the technicians transmitted the response, Chun pulled up the deployment roster for the Third Fleet. 17 ships, including the dreadnought ECS Indomitable. It was the largest rapid response force Earth maintained, designed specifically for emergency situations in deep space. Admiral Marcus Okonkwo appeared on her screen within minutes. The older man looked tired but alert. Commander Chun, I saw the distress signal. What is your assessment? We need to respond, sir. If that ship is real, thousands of people are dying. But I have concerns about the situation. Explain. The location is isolated. The timing is convenient. The message contains every emotional element designed to provoke a response. It could be legitimate, but it could also be a trap. Okonkwo nodded slowly. I have been thinking the same thing. We are new to interstellar space, Commander. We know there are other species out there, but we do not know their intentions. Some may be friendly, some may not. So what do we do, sir? We respond, Okonkwo said firmly. We respond because that is what we do. But we respond prepared for the worst. I am authorizing deployment of the entire Third Fleet under your command. If this is a rescue mission, you will have the resources to save everyone. If this is a trap, you will have the firepower to handle it. Chun felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders. 17 ships, 3,000 crew members. The responsibility for all of them was now hers. Rules of engagement, sir? Protocol Tartarus is authorized if you determine hostile intent. But Commander, make absolutely certain before you invoke it. We do not want our first major contact with an alien species to be a war crime. Understood, sir. We deploy in 6 hours. The next 6 hours were controlled chaos. The Third Fleet had been on standby, but moving from standby to deployment still required enormous coordination. Supplies had to be loaded, crews had to be briefed, weapons had to be armed and tested. Chun walked through the docking bay of the Indomitable, watching cargo drones load massive containers into the hold. Food, water, medical supplies, temporary shelter modules, oxygen generators. Enough to sustain 10,000 people for 6 months. If the refugees were real, Earth would not let them suffer. Dr. James Morrison found her near the medical bay. The chief medical officer carried a tablet listing his team's preparations. We are bringing 40 surgeons, 200 nurses, and enough medical equipment to set up a field hospital. If they have wounded, we can handle it. Good, Chun said. But James, I need you to prepare for another possibility. A trap. Yes, yes. If this goes wrong, we may have our own casualties. Be ready for anything. Morrison's expression darkened, but he nodded. We will be ready. Chun continued her inspection, visiting each section of the ship. The engineering teams had the reactors running at optimal levels. The weapons crews were loading railgun ammunition and checking targeting systems. The Marines were suited up and ready to board damaged vessels if necessary. When she finally reached the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez greeted her with a status report. All ships report ready for departure, Commander. We can leave on your order. Chun took the captain's chair and looked at the main view screen. In the display, she could see the other 16 ships of the fleet arranged in formation. Destroyers, cruisers, supply vessels, hospital ships. Every one of them carried people who had volunteered to risk their lives to save strangers. Send a final message to the distress beacon, she ordered. Tell them we are coming. Tell them to hold on. Tell them Earth has heard their call. As the message transmitted, Chun reviewed the tactical data one more time. If this was an ambush, the enemy would likely have superior numbers and position. They would expect the human fleet to be lightly armed and unprepared for combat. They would think compassion meant weakness. They would be wrong. Earth had learned its lessons in blood over thousands of years of history. The species that survived were not the strongest or the smartest. They were the ones who learned to balance kindness with strength, to offer help with one hand while keeping a weapon ready in the other. The third fleet carried enough medical supplies to save a colony. It also carried enough firepower to crack a planet. All ships, this is Commander Chun, she announced across the fleet-wide channel. We are responding to a distress call from unknown parties claiming to need rescue. Our mission is to save lives. But we do not know what we will find when we arrive. Stay alert, stay ready, and remember your training. She paused, thinking of her sister, thinking of all the people who had died waiting for help that never came. If there are people in trouble, we will bring them home. If someone is using suffering as bait, we will teach them why that was a mistake. All ships engage faster than light drives. Destination: Proxima Centauri. The Indomitable's engines hummed as the ship accelerated. Around them, the other 16 vessels matched their speed. Together, they jumped into faster-than-light travel, racing toward a distress signal that might be real or might be death waiting in the darkness. Chun sat in her chair and watched the stars blur past. In 72 hours, they would have their answer. And whatever waited for them at Proxima, the Third Fleet would face it together. She thought about the message they had sent, about the promise they had made. Help is coming. Hold on. Earth always kept its promises. For better or worse, the galaxy was about to learn that lesson. The Third Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the exact coordinates the distress beacon had provided. Commander Chen immediately ordered battle stations. Alarms echoed through every ship as crews rushed to their positions. On the bridge of the Indomitable, displays lit up with censored data. Full scan, Chun ordered. Find that refugee ship. Lieutenant Park worked the sensors frantically. I am not detecting any vessels, Commander. The distress beacon is here, but it is just a transmitter buoy. No life signs, no ship. Chun felt ice form in her stomach. Defensive formation. All shields to maximum. Prepare weapons. She was still giving orders when space itself seemed to tear open around them. 62 massive warships appeared from nowhere, their cloaking fields dropping simultaneously. The Valkyrian fleet surrounded the human vessels in a perfect sphere of firepower. Contact, Park shouted. 60-plus hostile vessels, all weapon systems hot. We are completely surrounded. On the main screen, a face appeared. Admiral Dexner looked at Chun with 3 eyes full of amusement. His translator rendered his words in perfect English. Greetings, humans. Welcome to your grave. I am Admiral Dexner of the Valkyrian Empire. You have fallen for the oldest trick in our arsenal. There are no refugees. There never were. Only bait, and you swallowed it whole. Chun stared at the alien commander. Her hands gripped the armrests of her chair hard enough to hurt. Dexner continued, clearly enjoying himself. Your compassion is admirable but foolish. We have used this strategy 43 times against 43 different species. All of them came to help. All of them died or surrendered. You see, in this galaxy, kindness is weakness, and weakness gets you killed. The alien leaned forward. You will surrender your ships immediately. You will transfer all technology and cargo to our vessels. Your crews will be processed as prisoners. If you comply, most of you will live. If you resist, we will destroy every ship and take what we want from the wreckage. You have 60 seconds to decide. The channel closed. Chun sat in silence for 3 heartbeats. Around her, the bridge crew waited for orders. She could feel their fear, their anger, their confusion. She thought about her sister. She thought about the promise she had made. She thought about every person who had ever sent a distress signal and waited, terrified, hoping someone would care enough to come. And she thought about these aliens who had turned that hope into a weapon. Open a channel, she said quietly. All frequencies. I want the entire Valkyrian fleet to hear this. The communications officer nodded. Channel open, Commander. Chun stood from her chair. When she spoke, her voice was cold and clear. Admiral Dexner, you made a mistake. You pretended to be refugees. You faked the voices of children dying. You weaponized the one thing that makes us human, our refusal to let others suffer when we can help. She paused, letting the words sink in. That was your mistake. She cut the channel. Commander? Rodriguez asked. What are your orders? Chun turned to her tactical officer. Lieutenant Park, transmit activation code Tartarus to all ships. Authorization Chun 77 Delta. Park's hands hesitated over his console. Commander, that is. Are you certain? Do it. The lieutenant entered the code. Across the fleet, every human ship received the same message. Protocol Tartarus was active. The rules of engagement had changed. Chun sat back down and pulled up the tactical display. Lieutenant Rodriguez, target their command ship. Spinal railgun, maximum charge. Spinal railgun charging, Rodriguez confirmed. 30 seconds to full power. Dexner's face appeared on the screen again. He looked annoyed. Your time is up, human. Surrender or die. Fire, Chun said. Thought the Indomitable's main weapon was a railgun that ran the entire length of the ship. Powerful electromagnetic coils accelerated a 2-ton tungsten rod to 15% of light speed. The projectile left the barrel in absolute silence. The Valkyrian sensors detected it 1 second before impact. Not nearly enough time to react. The tungsten rod hit Dexner's flagship dead center. The kinetic energy of a 2-ton mass moving at 45,000 kilometers per second exceeded most nuclear weapons. The flagship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist as a ship and became a rapidly expanding cloud of superheated gas and debris. The rod continued through the wreckage, still carrying most of its energy. It struck the cruiser behind the flagship, punching through shields and armor like they were paper. That ship broke in half. The rod, now tumbling and fragmenting, hit a third vessel, destroying its engine section. 3 Valkyrian ships gone in the time it took to blink. The alien fleet froze, stunned by the impossible. Their intelligence said humans used primitive weapons. Their tactical doctrine assumed easy prey. Nothing had prepared them for this. All ships, Chun broadcast to her fleet. Execute Tartarus. No survivors who resist. Broadcast the evidence. The galaxy needs to know what these creatures have done. The Third Fleet opened fire. Human railguns spat tungsten death across the battlefield. Each destroyer carried 20 guns. Each cruiser carried 50. The Indomitable alone fired 40 rounds per minute from its secondary batteries. The Valkyrian, Shields, designed to stop energy weapons, did almost nothing against solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. A Valkyrian battleship tried to close the distance, firing its plasma cannons. The beams struck the indomitable shields and scattered. The human barriers were not traditional deflectors. They were magnetic fields designed to redirect charged particles, backed by ablative armor that could survive re-entry into a star's atmosphere. Plasma weapons were almost useless against them. The battleship died 30 seconds later when a railgun round went through its bridge. "They are trying to jam our communications," Park reported. Chun almost smiled. "Let them try." Switch to the backup system. Humanity had spent 200 years perfecting electronic warfare. They had fought digital battles long before reaching space. Hackers, corporations, governments, and criminals had created an arms race in cyber technology that no other species could match. The Valkyrian jamming systems were sophisticated by galactic standards, but primitive by Earth's measures. Within seconds, human counter-intrusion software penetrated the Valkyrian network. Every alien ship suddenly found its own systems turning against it. Fire control systems reported false targets. Navigation computers gave incorrect coordinates. Communication arrays broadcast nothing but static. A squadron of Valkyrian fighters launched to attack the human hospital ship. The EC's Mercy Hope had minimal weapons, but it did not need them. Its point defense system activated automatically. Thousands of small railguns, designed to shoot down micrometeorites traveling at interstellar speeds, tracked the incoming fighters. The guns fired. The fighters vanished, turned into scrap by weapons that could hit objects smaller than a fist, moving faster than bullets. "Enemy vessels attempting to retreat," Rodriguez reported. "Deny them," Chun ordered. "Deploy the drone swarms." From each human ship, thousands of small autonomous drones launched. They were simple machines, each one carrying a magnetic clamp and a small explosive charge. They swarmed toward the Valkyrian ships like angry insects. The aliens tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. The drones attached themselves to engine nacelles and faster-than-light drives. Then they detonated. Not enough to destroy the ships, but enough to cripple their ability to escape. A Valkyrian admiral, whoever had taken command after Dexnar's death, broadcast a surrender offer. Chun rejected it. "No, you do not get to pretend to be victims now. You do not get to ask for mercy after weaponizing it." "Commander," Dr. Morrison's voice came through from medical. "Some of the alien ships are broadcasting actual distress calls. They have wounded." "Are they asking for help or demanding we stop shooting?" "Asking for help." Chun considered this. Protocol Tartarus was clear. Those who weaponize mercy forfeit theirs. But she was not these aliens. She would not become them to defeat them. "Ceasefire," she ordered, "but keep weapons hot. Marines, prepare boarding parties. We are going to secure those ships and treat their wounded. And we are going to find every piece of evidence of what they have done." The battle lasted 17 minutes from first shot to ceasefire. When it ended, 41 Valkyrian ships were destroyed. 21 were crippled and drifting. Not one human vessel had suffered more than cosmetic damage. Chun stood on her bridge and looked at the tactical display. All around them, alien ships burned or surrendered. She felt no satisfaction, only cold anger. "Lieutenant Park, compile everything. Every communication, every sensor log, every tactical analysis. Package it for immediate transmission to Earth and every known alien government." "Yes, Commander." "And send a message to Galactic Assembly, if such a thing exists. Tell them Earth has a statement to make." She looked at the dead refugee beacon, still broadcasting its false cries for help. "These monsters pretended to need rescue," she said quietly. "We turned it into their funeral. And the galaxy needs to know why." The Marines from the ECS Indomitable moved through the crippled Valkyrian cruiser with weapons raised and medical supplies ready. Sergeant Michael Torres led the first team, his combat suit reading the alien atmosphere as toxic but manageable with filters. Around him, his squad moved in practice formation. Movement ahead, Corporal Kim warned. They found 3 Valkyrian crew members huddled in what looked like a medical bay. 2 were wounded, bleeding from injuries sustained when their ship had been hit. The 3rd held a weapon but did not raise it. "Stand down," Torres ordered through his translator. "We are here to help your wounded." The aliens stared at him in confusion. "You attack us. You destroy our ships. Why would you help now?" "Because you asked," Torres said simply. "Doc, get in here." Navy Corpsman Rachel Hayes pushed past the Marines and approached the wounded aliens. They flinched away from her, but she ignored their fear and began examining their injuries. Within minutes, she had both of them stabilized and was setting up in 4-line on the worst of the 2. "Sergeant," one of the Marines called from deeper in the ship. "You need to see this." Torres left the medical bay and followed the voice to what appeared to be a data center. Rows of servers lined the walls, still powered despite the damage to the ship. But what caught his attention were the screens. They showed recordings. Dozens of them. Hundreds. "What am I looking at?" Torres asked. The Marine, a tech specialist named Williams, pulled up one of the files. "I think this is their trophy collection, Sergeant." The video played. It showed a species Torres did not recognize, insectoid beings with delicate wings. Their ship was surrounded by Valkyrian warships. The aliens were surrendering, begging for mercy. The Valkyrians boarded their vessel and began executing the crew methodically, one by one, while their commander watched and laughed. Williams pulled up another file. A different species, these ones aquatic, desperately trying to surrender. The Valkyrians took their ship apart while the crew was still inside. "How many files are there?" Torres asked, feeling sick. "Hundreds. Each one is a different species. Different ship. This goes back decades, Sergeant. Maybe longer." Torres activated his command channel. "Commander Chun, this is Torres. You need to see what we found." Within an hour, every boarding team reported similar discoveries. The Valkyrians had kept detailed records of every trap they had sprung, every ship they had captured, every species they had murdered. They had recorded it all, apparently as entertainment or training material. Back on the Indomitable, Commander Chun reviewed the files with Dr. Morrison and her senior staff. Each video was worse than the last. The Valkyrians had perfected their false distress signals, tailoring each one to the target species. Some claimed to be scientific expeditions in trouble. Others were medical ships. Still others were passenger vessels carrying families. And every time, when the rescuers arrived, the Valkyrians had slaughtered them. 43 species, Morrison said quietly. 43 times they did this. How did no one know? How did no one warn anyone? Lieutenant Park had been analyzing the database. Because they made sure there were no survivors. Every ship they captured, every crew member they took prisoner, they either killed them or sold them as slaves to isolated markets. No one escaped to tell the story. Chun felt rage building inside her. These were not warriors. They were not even pirates. They were predators who had found the perfect hunting strategy and used it until it became routine. "Commander, we have a communication from Earth," the communications officer announced. "Admiral Okonkwo wants a full report." Chem compiled the battle data, the casualty figures, and most importantly, the evidence they had found. She transmitted everything to Earth, knowing it would take hours for the signal to arrive. But she also prepared a second transmission. This one was broadcast on all known frequencies, unencrypted, meant for anyone who could receive it. "This is Commander Sarah Chun of the Earth Coalition ship Indomitable. broadcasting to all spacefaring civilizations. We responded to what we believed was a distress signal from refugees in need. Instead, we encountered the Valkyrian Empire, who had created a false emergency as a trap. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Every phrase would be analyzed by alien species across the galaxy. The Valkyrian strategy was sophisticated and cruel. They studied their targets, created false distress signals designed to provoke a compassionate response, and then ambushed any ship that came to help. According to the evidence we recovered from their vessels, they have used this method successfully against 43 different species over several decades. Chan pulled up one of the videos. She did not show the executions, but she showed the moment of the trap springing, the moment when rescuers realized they had been deceived. We are transmitting the complete database we recovered. It contains the identity of every species the Valkyrians targeted, the composition of each trap, and the fate of the crews who responded. We are also transmitting the coordinates of 12 suspected slave markets where captured crews may have been sold. She let that information sink in for a moment. Humanity is new to interstellar space. We did not know these threats existed. We came to the stars hoping to find friends and allies. We built our ships to explore and protect. But we also came prepared. The screen switched to show the battlefield, the burning Valkyrian ships, the evidence of the brief, brutal fight. Earth is a saying, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." The Valkyrians will not fool anyone again. Of their 62 ship fleet, 41 are destroyed. 21 are captured. Their crews are being taken as prisoners of war and will be delivered to whatever authority the galactic community designates. Chum stood from her chair and looked directly into the camera. To any species who has lost people to this strategy, Earth offers its condolences and any assistance we can provide. To any species considering similar tactics, Earth offers a warning. We respond to every distress call. We take every cry for help seriously. But if you weaponize our compassion, you will discover that humans are very good at war. We have spent 10,000 years perfecting it. She signaled to cut the transmission, but Morrison spoke up. "Commander, there is something else. We found genetic samples. The Valkyrians were keeping DNA from the species they captured. We could identify the victims, maybe even find surviving family members." Chun considered this. It would be a massive undertaking, but necessary. Package the samples separately. Transmit them to Earth for analysis. We will identify every victim and notify their governments. These people deserve to be remembered. Over the next several hours, the Third Fleet worked systematically through the captured Valkyrian vessels. They secured all prisoners, cataloged all evidence, and prepared the ships for towing back to Earth or the nearest neutral station. Torres found Commander Chun in her ready room, reviewing files. The sergeant stood at attention. "At ease, Torres." "What is it?" "Ma'am, the alien wounded we treated, they are asking questions. They want to know why we helped them after the battle. What did you tell them?" "I said it was our duty, ma'am." But I do not think they understood. Chun stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, work crews were attaching tow cables to disabled Valkyrian ships. "Explain it to them this way, Sergeant. We came here because we heard someone calling for help. That turned out to be a lie. But when the battle ended, there really were people who needed help. We do not help people because we expect them to be good. We help them because we choose to be good. Even our enemies deserve medical treatment and basic dignity. That is what separates us from them." Torres nodded slowly. "I will tell them, Commander, though I do not think they will believe it." "They will," Chun said. "In time, when they see that we mean it. When they see that we treat our principles as absolutes, not conveniences." The sergeant saluted and left. Chun returned to her work, but her mind was on the message she had broadcast. By now, it would be spreading across the galaxy, translated into hundreds of languages, analyzed by thousands of governments and species. Earth had announced itself to the galaxy, not with exploration or trade, but with violence in defense of a principle. She wondered how that would be received. Would other species see them as protectors or as threats? She thought about her sister again, about all the people who had died waiting for help, about the 43 species who had fallen for the Valkyrian trap. No more, she thought. Not while humanity had anything to say about it. The galaxy had predators. Now it had hunters. 3 months after the battle at Proxima Centauri, Commander Sarah Chun stood before the Galactic Assembly for the first time. The chamber was vast, built to accommodate thousands of different species. Representatives from 400 civilizations filled the seats, their translation devices rendering her words into hundreds of languages. Simultaneously, Earth had been invited to join the assembly after the transmission had spread across known space. The invitation had come quickly, with unusual urgency. Now Chun understood why. The assembly chamber was in chaos. Order. The speaker, a tall crystalline being named Shlara, called out. We will have order. The human representative has been granted the floor. Chun stepped to the podium. Behind her, on the massive display screens, images from the Valkyrian database played on repeat. The trapped ships, the murdered crews. 43 species, each one represented in this chamber, each one demanding justice. Thank you, Speaker Shlara, Chun began. I am Commander Sarah Chun, representing Earth. 3 months ago, my fleet responded to a distress signal that turned out to be a trap. We have provided you with all the evidence we recovered. I am here to answer any questions. A representative from the Malari delegation stood. Chun recognized them from the database. The Valkyrians had captured 2 of their science vessels 12 years ago. Commander Chun, the Malari said, their voice heavy with emotion. You recovered the DNA samples of our missing crew. You have given us the ability to identify our dead and bring closure to their families. For this, we thank you. But I must ask, why did you fight? You could have retreated. You could have negotiated. Why did you choose violence? Chun had prepared for this question. Because they weaponized mercy. They turned compassion into a trap. Every species that fell for their deception did so because they wanted to help others. The Valkyrians made kindness itself dangerous. That could not stand. Another delegate stood from a species called the Torsion. But you destroyed 41 ships. You killed thousands. Was this not excessive? No, Chun said firmly. They had done this 43 times before. They had perfected their strategy. They had no intention of stopping. Anything less than total defeat would have allowed them to continue. She paused. And we offered them surrender. They refused. That was not entirely true. She had rejected their surrender offer, but only after they had shown no remorse, no understanding of what they had done wrong. A third delegate, from a species called the Korath, stood without waiting to be recognized. You claim to value compassion, yet you invoke something you call Protocol Tartarus, a protocol that specifically denies mercy to those who weaponize it. This seems contradictory. Chun looked at the Korath directly. Is it? Let me ask you this. If someone uses your kindness as a weapon against you, are you required to keep being kind to them? If a predator disguises itself as prey, are you obligated to treat it as prey? The strong protect the weak, Chun continued. That is a fundamental principle of civilization. But what happens when predators learn to pretend to be weak? What happens when they mimic the cries of the helpless to lure in rescuers? Do we stop helping anyone? Do we let real victims die because we are afraid of traps? She could see the delegates considering this. Humanity chose a different path. We will always respond to distress calls. We will always try to help. But we will come prepared to fight because we know monsters exist. And if someone uses suffering as bait, we will make sure they regret it. Speaker Shlara spoke up. Commander, the Assembly has reviewed your actions and the evidence you provided. We have verified the authenticity of the Valkyrian database. We have confirmed that 43 member species lost vessels to their tactics. The question before us now is, what happens next? With respect, Speaker, that is not Earth's decision to make. We captured the Valkyrian survivors and their ships. We have brought them here, to the Assembly, because they committed crimes against the entire galactic community. Their punishment should be determined by their victims. This caused murmuring throughout the chamber. Apparently, this was unusual. You do not claim them as prisoners of war? Shlara asked. You do not demand reparations or territory. No. Earth wants nothing from them except assurance that they will never do this again. The survivors are yours to judge. A human might have missed it, but Chen saw the ripple of surprise move through the Assembly. She had studied galactic politics during the journey here. Most species who won a military victory demanded spoils. Earth was offering up their prisoners and asking for nothing in return. A delegate she did not recognize stood. Commander Chun, I must ask a difficult question. Your species is new to interstellar space, yet you defeated a fleet that outnumbered you 4-1. Your weapons are unlike anything we have seen. Your electronic warfare capabilities are far beyond our own. Should the Assembly be concerned about human military power? Chun smiled slightly. Let me tell you about Earth's military history. We have fought more wars than we can count. Nation against nation, ideology against ideology, sometimes for good reasons and sometimes for terrible ones. We have weapons that can crack planets and systems that can wage war from the other side of the galaxy. She saw fear flash across several faces. But we also have laws. We have principles. We have organizations dedicated to preventing war and protecting civilians. We are dangerous. Yes. Every spacefaring species has the potential to be dangerous. The question is, what do we choose to do with that power? Chun pulled up an image on the display. It showed the monument that Earth had constructed at Proxima, at the exact coordinates where the false distress beacon had been. We built this memorial at the battle site. It lists the names of every victim we could identify from the Valkyrian database. Every person who responded to a false distress call and died for their compassion. The inscription reads, "They called for help. No one came. That ends today." She let the image stay on the screen as she continued. Earth's power is directed at one goal, making sure that never happens again. We will respond to distress calls. We will help those in need. And we will destroy anyone who tries to turn that into a weapon. That is our promise to the galaxy. The chamber fell silent. Chun could see delegates consulting with each other, their translation devices creating a soft hum of conversation. Finally, Speaker Shlara spoke. Commander Chun, the Assembly will take your testimony under advisement. We will deliberate on the fate of the Valkyrian prisoners and on Earth's application for membership. You are dismissed. Chun bowed and left the podium. As she walked out, she passed the Malari delegate. The alien touched her shoulder gently. My daughter was on one of those science vessels, they said softly. For 12 years, we did not know what happened to her. Your genetic analysis confirmed that she died in the initial attack. It brings me pain, but also peace. Thank you. Chun did not trust herself to speak. She simply nodded and continued walking. Later, in her quarters on the diplomatic station, Chun received a transmission from Earth. Admiral Okonkwo appeared on the screen. Commander, the Assembly voted. Earth has been granted full membership. They also voted to dissolve the Valkyrian Empire and redistribute its territory to the species they victimized. The survivors will face trial. Good, Chun said. There's more. 17 species have requested mutual defense pacts with Earth. They want assurance that if they respond to distress calls in the future, human ships will be available to support them. The Council is considering it. Chun felt a weight settle on her shoulders. Earth had come to the stars hoping for friends. Instead, they had become protectors. Sir, I need to ask. Did we do the right thing? Protocol Tartarus, the battle, all of it. Did we make the right choice? Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. Commander, before you destroyed that Valkyrian fleet, false distress signals were a common pirate tactic. 47 different criminal organizations used variations of it. In the 3 months since your transmission, that number has dropped to 3. And those 3 have announced they are stopping the practice. Why? Chun asked. Because every one of them received the same message from species across the galaxy. The message said, if humans hear your signal, they will come, and they will turn your trap into your grave. Apparently, no one wants to risk it. Chun absorbed this. So we scared them into stopping. You made compassion dangerous to weaponize. You changed the equation. Now predators have to consider whether their prey might have human allies. That alone has saved lives. After the call ended, Chun stood at her window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, real distress calls were being sent. Ships in genuine trouble, colonies facing disaster, people who needed help. And now, because of what happened at Proxima, more of those calls would be answered. Because species were less afraid of traps. Because predators were more afraid of consequences. She thought about her sister one more time. About the 3 days she had waited for rescue that never came. I kept my promise, Chun whispered to the stars. No one waits alone anymore. The galaxy had learned a new truth. Humanity would always come when called. They would bring medicine and food and hope. But they would also bring railguns and marines and the absolute certainty that kindness was not weakness. In space, no one could hear you scream.